It was the best 100-metre field that's greeted the starter in Australia this season, and while Josh Ross showed his consistency, the 23-year-old was bridesmaid once again. Clocking a solid 10.3 seconds for the trip, it wasn't enough to beat Daniel Batman. It was a great night for the sprinter, who made it a winning double in the 200 metres. Revenge could come quickly, with Ross lining up in tomorrow's meet in Adelaide as well.
Anyone can win on a day, so can't underestimate anyone out there, which is good. It's good for the sport these days.
A great finish too for Newcastle's Michael Barwick, just edged out to place third in a nail-biting finish in the 800 metres. Back to the pool, and while Ashton Field's Stephanie Williams is already rubbing shoulders with the likes of Michael Klim and Gian Rooney, it's a World Cup team she wants to join them on later in the year. Now based at the AIS in Canberra, the 15-year-old is ranked our best female 1500 metre swimmer and will swim a range of events at this week's trials.
I'm trying not to focus on that. I really want to make the team. That's my goal. But I'm trying to focus on more about doing PBs and swimming best times.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
On a voyage from Port Macquarie to Sydney's Palm Beach, the Marie Chocolat made an unexpected stopover in Newcastle after an unforeseen run-in with a bulk carrier just after 4:30am. Sailors Peter Main from Port and Tim Kay from Sydney had seen the tanker was on the same course some distance behind them, but had assumed it would have spotted the yacht on a radar and overtaken.
I went down to get some food, came back up, and here's this big ship bearing down on us, and we had no time to manoeuvre.
The dark red paint shows where the tanker scraped the side of the smaller vessel. The mast was also snapped, causing thousands of dollars worth of damage to the rigging. Water police say they know which bulk carrier was responsible and are now trying to find out how the collision occurred.
We have been in contact with them, and at present we're attempting to get some officers out on board and speak to the captain of the ship.
Meanwhile, Peter and Tim have one hell of a story to tell the grandkids.
Looking forward to going home. Yeah, it's an experience I'd never want to repeat again. It's really scary stuff.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. Yesterday, the state government's scientific committee declared the Lower Hunter's spotted gum and ironbark forest endangered. It's an area of around 30,000 hectares between Beresfield and Cessnock. The decision means anyone wishing to build within the area will have to carry out additional environmental impact studies, but development is not completely ruled out. Some have had a different interpretation.
As we understand it, the areas affected, the 32,000 hectares, are now frozen, full stop, for future development.
The Hunter Business Chamber plans to appeal the ruling, saying it was made without an understanding of the economic and social implications. But conservation groups believe the outrage is just a result of misinformation.
They don't understand that it's not going to stop development. It will mean that there's an extra layer of care, and it'll probably mean we get better quality developments because extra thought and care has gone in.
Starting at the beach, running out, the water was beautiful, clear, nice and warm, and it was so safe the whole way through. There was lots of people around and you could see the bottom, you could see fish swimming underneath you. It was just lovely.
For many kids, strapping on the boots and running onto a famous rugby league ground like Newcastle's Energy Australia Stadium would be the ultimate thrill. And let's face it, the youngest of players love to emulate their heroes. But will the alleged drunken behaviour of Newcastle Knights players, combined with the Bulldogs scandal last year, turn parents away from Junior League in the Hunter?
Yes, I think it would. I think it's a shame. Terrible, terrible.
You'd still let them play?
Yep, definitely. Definitely would.
Yes, I would let my kids play.
The Newcastle Rugby League is concerned about the impact the Knights Bathurst controversy could have on the junior ranks.
Well, it certainly doesn't help for a start. It's something that rugby league in general could do without.
But while off-field controversy seems to follow rugby league, Frank Barrett says the game actually grew in the region by 10% from 2003 to 2004, with an extra 720 players across junior and senior grades. However, with the enforcement of codes of conduct becoming so important, officials are turning away from league teams at both those levels.
The job of the administrator has become more difficult, and that's disappointing because they're harder and harder to get, and there's less and less of them, unfortunately, at the moment.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
There was a notable absence in the Knights lineup this afternoon as the side gathered for training, the missing player Dane Tilse. And while coach Michael Hagan supports the board's swift decision to sack Tilse, his absence was felt by all members of the team.
I do feel a fair bit of sadness for Dane Tilse, given the fact that he's been at this football club for 4 or 5 years, and we see him with a good future in the game.
The Knights' next major hurdle is securing their new major naming rights sponsor. They've revealed that the prospective sponsor, which was to be named this week, is now having reservations.
It certainly hasn't helped. The deal wasn't signed off, and our major sponsor, who I'm not prepared to name, we will be having further discussions with. I guess we've been served with what I would call a show cause notice.
According to Knights management, the 11 other players, which have copped a $50,000 fine, returned to their hotel for the 3 a.m. curfew, but headed back out to the university campus at 5 a.m. The incident has called into question whether there should be a player alcohol ban for away games and whether the 3 a.m. curfew was strict enough. The pre-season match, which the Knights lost, finished at 9:30 p.m, giving players 5.5 hours until their curfew. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
If fans and sponsors wanted a swift and severe response to the Newcastle Knights' drink-fuelled antics in Bathurst, they got it. Hit with a $100,000 fine by the NRL, the club in turn then slapped fines totalling $50,000 on 12 players. But most compelling was the dozen were named, fronted waiting media and apologised.
We would like to stress our actions were unacceptable. We have breached our own code of conduct, the trust of the club and our supporters. We are committed now to working hard towards rebuilding that trust. Thank you. Good night.
But it's a case of goodbye for Dane Tilse. The 20-year-old's 2-year deal with Newcastle was terminated, while the NRL will make it impossible for him to play elsewhere in the competition for at least 12 months.
I feel devastated that, I've had a dream of a long time of being a professional footballer, and that's been taken away from me through a lot of fault of my own.
The Scone youngster spent much of the day seeking legal advice with thoughts to mounting an appeal, but while not wanting to be drawn on events alleged on that fateful morning in Bathurst, he didn't escape the fact he'd done the wrong thing.
I'm a grown man, I'm 20 years old, and I need to realise that I've got to take responsibility for my own actions.
In saying that, he had hoped his honesty in the Bathurst affair would have meant some leniency from his club, in a decision described as one made in haste and with pressure from above.
People wanted to heads, and I was the sort of not the scapegoat, but I was made an example of.
Rubbed out of the NRL for at least a year, the apprentice carpenter believes his league career isn't over, but now it's simply time to be with family and friends. Jim Callanan, NBN News. A club under siege, a team under pressure, and a coach still wondering just how things could have gone so wrong. Although dealing with his own disappointment, Michael Hagan is getting on with things.
We've had to accept and deal with the issues of the last couple of days. We can't hide or escape from that. But we've got a business and a football team to get organised.
And for a trial match, there's plenty of interest, given it marks the return of Andrew Johns after that long layoff from a knee reconstruction.
Well, I guess he's got his own share of nerves to deal with, and he probably doesn't need the additional distractions that this has caused. But typical of how he goes about his football, I'm sure he'll look forward to the game and play a part of the game.
Johns is likely to play only half the trial at best in his return to football. That will also see a number of top-ranked players set out for the first time, including Matt Gidley, Josh Perry and Steve Simpson.
It's our last opportunity to get our preparation right for what's going to be a very big year for the club. So we need to make the most of this week and this weekend's game to get our preparation in order.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Like most summer Saturday afternoons at Newcastle's #1 sports ground, cricket held centre stage. But on March 12, it'll be the Sydney Swans in the middle. And for local officials, it's just not cricket. Scheduled to host a semi-final on the same day and worried about damage to the ground prior to the grand final, cricket officials appealed but have to accept the umpire's decision.
I see the point very much of promoting Newcastle through sport, but surely it could be done a different weekend.
You couldn't get a bigger contrast in sentiment from the local AFL community, who, while sympathetic to cricket's concerns, can't wait for the Swans to arrive.
It's fantastic for the region, two big sides. It's great to attract a big venue such as #1 sports ground, and people in the region should be proud that we're able to host such an event.
With an opponent still to be confirmed, it's thought Essendon will return after playing the Swans here last year. But unlike that trial, both will field near full-strength squads this time.
Just 1 week out from the start of the season, they'll have their full-strength side here. We've spoken to Sydney and they've confirmed that, so it should be a ripper of a game.
Sydney actually welcomed back some big names today, but was still thrashed by Brisbane at Telstra Stadium by some 8 goals.
They're the men and women in orange overalls who are the backbone of relief efforts in times of flood and severe storms. But no amount of community work could make the State Emergency Service exempt of rationalisation, and as of tomorrow morning, the Upper and Lower Hunter SES divisions will become one zone.
That's a total of 19 units, which will probably make it the biggest division in the state.
Former Lower Hunter boss Greg Perry will take command of the new region, known simply as Hunter.
We will administer the division, the Hunter division, from Medford, and as I said, there'll be no disruption to our normal service to when we have a storm or a flood. People will still be there, the volunteers will still be there to help.
There were concerns from Upper Hunter members that they'd be swallowed up and forgotten about when the amalgamation took effect. Not the case, says their new boss. He maintains the new division may have more bargaining power when putting in funding requests.
From my point of view, it won't be a matter of fact that we come into town and take over. You know, I don't like the word take over. It's an amalgamation.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News. Perhaps it should be called dog climbing. Dog jumping has become big business for both their owners and, in this case, delicatessens, but at 2 metres it was too many snags for this hot dog. Others who couldn't go up went around.
They're just willing to please you, they're that sort of dog.
That he did, both Cobber and Daisy clearing 2.6 metres or 8.5 feet, creating a show record, something the Red Kelpie has been training for.
We just got some logs from Dad's work and we put them up and yeah, we started to jump her over.
At the same show, wives were on their husband's back, but no one was complaining. You see, these are the national wife-carrying titles. The couple's lured by $3,500 in prize money.
We also have an added bonus, which is the wife's weight in beer. So you would hope that your wife would be a little on the heavier side in that case.
I've done plenty of stupid stunts, but yeah, this is pretty funny. This will be the best one.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News. With a mountain of pre-season training and trial games out of the way, Newcastle's rugby rep side can now turn preparation into play tomorrow night. No stone has been left unturned as the squad aims to win its first Cordwell Cup since 2001, a goal that's well known.
We're not too unhappy about that because the expectation, I think, will get the best out of the guys.
Rugby officials were today surrounded by security, but for all the right reasons, with Hunter Rugby securing what some codes can't at present, major financial support. SNP signing on for a 2-year deal that's worth into 6 figures for the local union. It's every man for himself tomorrow night at Club Nova Panthers for the ISKA title bout between 5-time Finnish champion Nicholas Winberg and Newcastle's own Jared Botha. The hometown boy just sneaking in under the required weight of 81.4 kilograms.
Good, feeling nervous, but I'm getting used to it now. I'd feel funny if I wasn't nervous, so yeah, I just want to get in there and have a good fight.
His more experienced opponent, ice cool despite the day's heat.
For once, I can relax. I'm the challenger. He's the local boy. He's got all the pressure. I'm just a foreigner.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Most of the 9,000 people living in the new Upper Hunter Shire turned out to vote today to choose 9 councillors from 15 candidates. It's a year since the state government decided that Scone, Merriwa, Murrurundi and Cassilis should all be lumped together into the one local government area. Administrator John Jobling has had the task of making the new arrangement work.
Truth of the matter is there are more resources, there are more facilities, there's more ability, and the spread of things you can do in a shire that you couldn't do before with the 3 separate ones.
Candidates say they're keen to see the decision-making power put back in the hands of local people.
I think it'll be wonderful to get a council back in Scone. I mean, it's been a long time without councillors. We need the people so that choices can be made.
There are concerns that smaller outlying communities won't be properly represented in a Scone-centric council.
The decisions that will have to be made shouldn't be made in one centre, and I think it's extremely important that the likes of the outlying areas such as Merriwa and Murrurundi are represented, and Aberdeen.
If you look at Merriwa and Murrurundi, there'll be 2 or perhaps even 3 representatives directly from those areas, which will be both the urban area and the rural area. But all the councillors, if they want to get re-elected, are going to have to look after the whole shire.
The election results won't be known until midweek after the counting of pre-poll votes and the distribution of preferences. The new mayor will be chosen by councillors at the first meeting on March the 14th. Paul Lobb, NBN News. Newcastle has many beautiful features, but Hunter Street isn't one of them. In between pockets of fresh new apartment buildings and well-kept shops, there are dozens of rotting old structures that many believe are a blight on the cityscape.
Yeah, it's a bit shabby at the moment. It could be better.
Looks like a war zone. It looks dead.
The Newcastle Alliance, that represents 1,400 businesses throughout the city, says the culprits know who they are.
The people who own the buildings are responsible for them, and if you look at some of the buildings in this town that have had DA after DA after DA on them, then I think it's time the council and the developers sat down and decided whether or not something's going to happen with these properties, because somebody who lives in Sydney and owns a property in Newcastle who's not tending it properly is really doing us a great disservice, and Newcastle deserves a lot better from those property owners.
And it's hard to measure the impact of the visual pollution on trade.
It's gone pretty quiet. Like, I've worked in a shop for 3 years up there and it's gotten pretty quiet, which is a worry. With all the graffiti and stuff like that, it's not looking very good.
We need to get property developers to develop their properties rather than sitting on them for such a long period of time and neglecting them, because they're letting us down.
While the suits of the Football Federation unveiled the draw in Melbourne, in Newcastle, the Jets continued building towards the season and historic first game.
The fact that Newcastle, or the City of Newcastle, has been bestowed the honour of kicking off the league is a great testament to Newcastle's sporting prowess.
The final squad to host Adelaide, though, is still to be rounded out, with 3 spots on a 20-man roster to be filled. One of those has been left open for former Socceroo Paul Ocon, despite admissions he won't commit for the World Club Challenge.
As a football coach, you're very greedy and you want things to happen as quick as possible. If it's going to be a very quality type of player that will excite the city, then we've got to be patient.
It's a quality that seems in good supply at the club, with the Terry Venables coaching saga still alive. Expectations he could be in Newcastle before the World Club Challenge in May have risen again. The current coach, though, already likes what he sees in the full 3 rounds of the draw.
We only have to travel to the Kings once, to Adelaide once and to Perth once, so we're pretty comfortable with that.
Fans will get plenty of time to see their new side before the A-League kicks off, with a pre-season tournament also pencilled in. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Swans coach Paul Roos described it as a full dress rehearsal for the season proper, but the most important items today were the ice vests to help keep his players cool. After Collingwood kicked the first few goals, the Swans hit a hot streak. Big Barry Hall was amongst it as usual, while things heated up between Andrew Shawbull and Brodie Holland. Only 4 points separated them at the first quarter, but that all changed in the opening minutes of the second, with Sydney booting 3 straight goals. But this was a game that ebbed and flowed throughout, in what was a solid hit-out for both, just 2 weeks out from the start of the season. Most encouraging for the Swans, though, must have been the solid return for Brownlow medal winner Adam Goodes. Today was his first hit-out since a knee operation almost 4 months ago, and should he remain fit for the season, Sydney's premiership chances will certainly look the goods.
That's what this is all about, is trying to increase those numbers and the quality of athletes coming through.
In November 1996, 4 men drowned in an underground mining pit after they drilled into an old flooded shaft at the Gretley Colliery. The Industrial Relations Commission yesterday imposed a record $1.46 million fine on 2 mining companies for safety breaches. Not enough, say the victims' families.
Yeah, that's a pretty poor figure when you think that 4 members lost their lives, 4 families have been destroyed, and their extended families also have had 8.5 years of this torment.
Peter Murray's nephew Damon was among the miners killed, and for now there's no sign of closure. The mine's new owner is appealing the penalties.
I believe that Xstrata have shown their total contempt for the industry, for the community, and certainly for their employees.
The appeal will be heard on Monday. Mining unions now concerned if the penalties are lifted, there'll be no accountability.
People in the industry think our members are going to go to work under that sort of scenario, then I've got some sad news for them.
It's a homecoming of sorts for the Right Reverend Dr. Brian Farron. Completing an honours degree in theology from St John's College at Morpeth, the 61-year-old will return to the Hunter, this time as Bishop of Newcastle.
Only just got the news to him, and I suppose he's sleeping it off, but he was delighted, he was humbled by this appointment, and I hope that we might see him here within 3 months.
Dr Farron is currently serving the Perth Diocese as Assistant Bishop. The move to Newcastle considered quite the step up. Bishop Administrator Graham Rutherford wasn't expecting an outcome so soon, but has welcomed the appointment and Dr Farron's proactive views.
He's for a long time been very supportive of women's ministry, and he has expressed the view that he's in favour of women becoming bishops.
In a twist of fate, his predecessor, Roger Hurft, is now Archbishop of Perth. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
I was sort of 50-50 at the start of the week, but you know, a bit of pain still there, but I'll be able to get through the game.
Salamander Bay was at its brilliant best this morning, with a backdrop befitting the stature of such a race. While locals got the best vantage point, it was the women who hit the water first, as the field split into waves of two. Little time to reflect up front though, as Nikki Hackett left the rest treading water, opening almost a 2-minute lead on last year's winner, English Olympian Andrea Whitcomb. It was much closer in the men's, with a pack of 4 finishing the 1500 metre swim together, and little separated the group, which included defending champ Boyd Conrick, as they hit the saddle. In an event tailor-made for Hackett, her lead simply grew on the 40-kilometre cycle. By the time she headed out on foot, it had become more like a training run. The leading pack of men had ballooned to 5 as they hit the final transition, with Chris Dimitriev joining them after an incredible cycle as the noted runner made a real race of it. Catching Hackett halfway through the 10k run, the training partners headed for home together. The 26-year-old sparing a victory kiss as he crossed the line to claim the state Olympic distance title.
It's awesome. I've just had a really good year. It's just everything's really coming together, so I'm just really enjoying it, and I think that's showing in my racing.
Conrick home second, while Hackett made it a Central Coast quinilla.
Matched with NBN Soccer League side Hamilton Olympic, any suggestions of a mismatch was soon put to rest. A great save from Hamilton's goalkeeper among numerous obstacles for the Jets, but they had answers, and fancy ones at that. A well-executed play finished off by Ante Milicic. It didn't take long for the Jets to find their second, this time left up to national under-20s rep Mark Bridge. Dogged determination kept Hamilton Olympic in the game. The State Leaguers defending by the book. Shut down up front, the Jets put their long-range skills to the test, but to no avail. Hamilton Olympic going down by 3 goals, not bad considering the resumes of their opponents. In the open men's division, Cronulla and Northern Beaches from Sydney showed their prowess, getting off to a great start over the 35-kilometre course. It wasn't quite the calmer conditions of previous weeks at Port Stephens, but big seas is what outrigging is all about.
These canoes are made to ride the swell, and that's the most exciting part of the sport, when you get on a swell and you ride it. The canoes get up to 20 k's an hour, 25 k's an hour, and that's really exhilarating.
There's an unlimited interchange too. When one paddler gets tired, another is ready to fill the gap. Hunter crews were few and far between in all divisions, locals planning to make their mark next year after today's event whet their appetites. The Port Stephens Outrigger Challenge continues tomorrow. A brief but stunning sunrise signalled the end of warm-up time for the early starters at Newcastle's corporate triathlon. At Horseshoe Beach, the harbour was at its scenic best as the triathlon diehards began their campaign, starting with the swim. 500 metres later, Murwillumbah's Paul Matthews emerged first, his lead far from comfortable. Maitland's Melanie Sexton kept in touch with the front runners, but it's the transitions which separate leaders from the pack. Held over 20 kilometres for top classes and 15 k's for other divisions, the cycle course required riders to do several laps along Shortland Esplanade and Wharf Road. Going into the 5k run, it was the 21-year-old from the state's far north who looked most at home, Paul Matthews, going on to win his first such event, beating Peter Schockman from Mount Colah, if only just.
Well, yeah, I actually turned around at the wrong turnaround, the run turnaround, so we ended up running together for about a kilometre.
Morissette's Angie Sharp not far behind to take line honours in the ladies.
The four lips was tough on the bike because of the wind off the ocean, but once I got into a bit of a rhythm, it was good.
It's rapidly shaping as the end of an era for Aero Pelican, with its last Belmont Airport flight just under 2 weeks away. Once that happens, the airport will effectively close. However, residents are determined to fight the closure all the way.
I certainly won't be giving up the fight to retain Aero Pelican. This is just another step along the way.
During the meeting, local residents voiced fears that the land would be used for residential development and that they're prepared to object to any rezoning. Many also argue it's the only fast way to Sydney, with even the closest rail services simply out of the question.
And the feeling of the meeting was that everyone at that meeting unanimously supported Aero Pelican remaining in operation, and the recognition that Aero Pelican was a vital transport network.
Residents will now form a working party to liaise with Lake Macquarie Council in the hope that council gains ownership of the aerodrome. They will also push the airline's owners, International Air Parts, to call tenders or find another airline to take its place. Madeline Bond, NBN News. It's hard to imagine these intricate works were designed and created by 17 and 18-year-olds. The works on display at Newcastle's Regional Museum are the top 1% of last year's HSC Design and Technology projects. Michelle Nelson from Lisarow High School designed this educational sensory mat after she noticed a hole in the market for similar toys. It was created to promote fine motor development in children. Another work to receive top marks was Sarah Keen's filmed-themed shays.
I'm not really sure how I came up with the idea, it's just my love of photography and I've always loved design and tech.
Amazingly, both works were created in under a year for around $500. And also on display at Newcastle Library are the famous works of the Gould League. The exhibition marks 200 years since John Gould's birth and focuses on both his life and lithographic depictions of Australian birds and wildlife.
Only coming out of retirement to help get the Hunter franchise competitive, Hurley took a virtually new-look Pirates roster to the playoffs after winning only 2 games on its maiden voyage. That effort today reflected in his first ever naming as NBL Coach of the Year.
To me, it's a recognition of the club and the team. You don't win awards without having a very good team.
But fears that team could disband as players look to secure their futures, given the unknowns over the club's pending sale, could see Hurley get to defend his new title.
If in my own mind I thought it wasn't a good time to move away or it meant that we might lose some players, then I'd have to reconsider.
Harness racing and the final of the $20,000 Intercity Pace will be raced at Maitland tomorrow night. In danger of folding in recent years, the feature event has been revived with the help of Sydney's Harold Park and culminates on Saturday night. And the Newcastle Rugby Union side has made one change to its starting team for tomorrow night's Country Championship match against the Central Coast. University's Paul Smith will start at 5/8 for the must-win game.
A group of New Lambton residents says it's simply a band-aid solution, replacing the existing roundabout on Lookout Road with traffic lights. They believe the RTA should fix the root of the traffic problem, the fact that there's only one entrance to the region's largest and busiest hospital. They think the money could be better spent on creating a second entrance off Lookout Road at what's known as Possum Place to ease the congestion.
It needs a second entrance and it needs it now. If they built the second entrance, it would funnel traffic away from this intersection, and we believe there would not be any reason to remove the roundabout at this time.
There are also concerns the RTA will be closing off the fourth leg of the roundabout, which currently provides them access onto Lookout Road. That will force residents to take narrow suburban back streets around New Lambton to travel towards Newcastle or north to the university.
Well, we don't believe we've been properly consulted. We think they've gone ahead with this in a rush.
The RTA says it's consulting with the local community. A public meeting was held earlier this week and another has been called for Monday. But it seems their decision has already been made to go ahead with the upgrade. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The captain started training but was quickly put on ice. It was only precautionary, but given the club's luck of late, it probably wasn't a bad idea.
Yeah, he's had some treatment during the week, which he does every week, and just set out today knowing that he needs to get on the field and get through the game tomorrow night.
Kurt Gidley filled in at training but won't make his return this week. Instead, big brother Matt will join Johns in a new-look halves combination.
I think it's just general involvement, more defence and probably the organisational side of things, just trying to point blokes around and put them in the right directions.
Gidley is no stranger to the number 6 jumper, having played all his junior football there, but many of his teammates this week are still fresh in the top grade. The well-documented injury list is testing the very limits of the club, with Matt Kennedy's late clearance to play welcome news for a coach who's got the task of moulding a host of rookie talent.
To bring some new faces in for this week and get everything settled down, I guess, that's a challenge for the coach and the team. So we've done what we can do to get ourselves prepared, and I guess that's all we can do.
Some positive news late today also for Adam Woolnough, with scans revealing the young prop has suffered no major neck damage. He'll require further checks, however, before any thoughts of a return. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
That old saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, is particularly true of our arms and legs. It costs close to $2,000 to make an artificial limb. And while there's no official count of how many people were maimed by the tsunami in Aceh, fitting them all with prosthetics will be a long and costly exercise. Professor Joe Gabriel is the Newcastle surgeon who lobbied the federal government to fund the artificial limb project.
If you give them a limb, that means independence and mobility, and means that they become useful members of the community, where if they don't, they are just going to hop around on crutches made of cane.
Professor Gabriel hopes hospitals around Australia will donate the materials needed to make the prosthetics. And he's also looking for doctors and nurses with expertise in this area to volunteer to go to Aceh.
My proposal is to send volunteers of teams for the next 2 years until the Indonesians take over.
Dr. Gabriel is also calling on amputees in Australia to donate prosthetics they no longer use. Christine Tondorf, NBN News.
They were the days when a pound of prawns cost sixpence and a little shop on Wharf Road near the old Darks Iceworks was the place to buy them. Behind the counter you'd find the king of prawns, Pat Lynch.
Left school and went there, that's all I ever knew. That's all I ever knew, sort of thing, you know.
Pat bought the harbour's first bait shop from Hartley Spur and knocked it down before setting up Lynch's and becoming a household name for half a century. In the mid-80s, the pressures of development saw the shop move across the road into this little hut owned by Newcastle Council. It's been 17 years since Pat and wife Ina retired, but the now empty hut is still known as Lynch's, and now Newcastle Council is after someone else to take over the site where a 2-storey building would be allowed.
Maybe the days of the bait shops are gone by, sort of thing, and they can be used for a better purpose and that sort of business. I'd always like to see a prawn shop on Wharf Road for the children, but as I say, you don't see many children along the wharf fishing hour.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Well, what a week. We saw South Sydney forsake their home turf and play at Telstra Stadium next year, the blood controversy during the Manly Warriors game, and an injured Willie Mason in trouble for not turning up to the Bulldogs' first game. However, the biggest talking point again this week was the Knights. Now, unbelievably, they're going to take on Canberra with even more injury worries. They'll blood another 2 rookies in Brad Tye and Brendan Worth, making that 4 in 2 weeks. Now, it makes the Knights bench the youngest ever with an average age of 20 and just a handful of games between them when it comes to experience. Now, the record books show that the Knights have never lost their first 2 games of the season, but they also show that Newcastle have only won once in the last 17 years against Canberra. It's a tough road trip and even a tougher scenario when you consider up to 10 of the top graders will be unavailable, and doubts today over rookie prop Matt Kennedy. Now, as you could imagine, Coach McHagan is drawing on every bit of experience that he's got, and after analysing last week's game, there'll be a couple of aspects that he'll definitely want to improve. Now, that'll be the completion rate. They only done 18 out of 35 last week, and they missed 21 tackles compared to the Storm's 7. Now, you turn those numbers around and you're back in it. Now, in good news, the club has searched the countryside for another front rower, and Craig Smith, well, he's answered the challenge. The former Dragon, who's been in England in recent years, will line up for the Knights' next clash against the Cowboys, and that's some good news. And on the round 2's tips, I like the Bulldogs to win tonight. Tomorrow, it'll be the Knights. Go the Knights, Dragons and the Broncos. Sunday, Eagles, Roosters and the Eels. Have a great weekend. See you next week.
Birthdays are always big things, but after 2 decades of Surfest, no one wants to miss this celebration. Amongst those will be former world champion Tom Curran, the American who won the first ever event back in 1985.
This is one of the greatest moments of my life.
Back after all those years, Curran believes he'll give the young guns a run for their money as he aims to repeat his winning performance of 20 years ago.
Yes, I'm definitely hoping for that, but if I don't win it, I'll still be glad to be here.
In a field of some 220 surfers, he'll need more than an ounce of luck to claim title number 2, with the push for the first homegrown winner still on.
And I think that from a local point of view, we'll be hoping that a guy like Luke Egan, who's one of our favourite surfers, can pull off a hometown victory this year.
The real threat, though, must be in the shape of Gold Coast's Mick Fanning, who's just about everyone's pre-contest favourite after recently winning the World Championship Tour event at Snapper Rocks.
I think he's going to come into this event absolutely brimming with confidence. He loves being in Newcastle, and I think that he's going to surf really well in this event and be very, very hard to beat.
The competition and festival kicks off in just under 2 weeks. The fight's far from over was the message coming from Save Our Rail today, who continue to oppose the closure of Newcastle's inner city rail line. And it seems that they've got plenty of support, with big numbers rolling up to a rally today, including many local MPs.
This is a wrong decision, poorly based, giving us a second-hand, second-rate outcome, and we will oppose it.
The Action Group grilled a specially selected panel with prepared questions gathered from the community.
And we hope they'll take the questions forward. We've also prepared questions for the absent ones, such as Mr John Watkins.
Although last week Mr Watkins said unless a strong argument was presented, the decision to cut the rail line would stand. Seniors put motorised scooters through their paces today, testing out their skills throughout an obstacle course. The idea of the course was to improve riders' skills as well as educating them on the rules and regulations surrounding motorised wheelchair use.
It's to raise awareness of safety needs, not only by the people who use the motorised wheelchairs, but also by the general community, particularly those who are carers.
He believes that past accidents involving scooters could have been avoided had the riders been better educated.
There have been some crashes and some deaths and injuries in the past because of a lack of awareness by people using motorised wheelchairs.
The law considers people riding scooters to be pedestrians, and as such, they should stay well off the road to avoid accidents. Madeline Bonds, NBN News.
There wasn't a spare seat at Newcastle's Sacred Heart Cathedral on this Easter Sunday morning, the region's Catholic community united to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, while across town, the morning brought joy for Newcastle's Anglican population at Christchurch Cathedral. With a ray of light shining on the altar, the church's message was for people to be optimistic in a troubled world. But some, well, their mind may have been elsewhere. And fair enough, at 11 o'clock, 2,500 children anxiously lined up for the inaugural Newcastle City Church Easter Egg Hunt. It should have been called the Egg Scramble. Bodies went on the line for 10,000 precious plastic eggs. On closer inspection, they contained chocolates and prizes. For some kids, though, the prizes were skateboards, CD players and even a bike. The big turnout means it will be an annual egg hunt.
Next year is going to be 20,000 eggs, double what we've got now, so we're just really excited about that.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
The national meeting is a sacred event held in different regions each year. Today, Sandgate was where the revered sports car was worshipped. 464 Australian and overseas MG lovers have followed their hearts to the hunter.
We've spent 3 years organising this event, and this year we've been blessed to have people from Hawaii, South Africa and people from England.
Part of a busy schedule was the Motorcana. There's no doubt all the machines look good, but today was about performance. MGs are often associated with style and prestige. Today, raw grunt was another description. Newer models like the MG-F screamed around the obstacle course to be quickest to stop the clock. Tomorrow we'll see an MG hill climb near Raymond Terrace and an observation run to the Hunter Vineyards. Todd Nardi, NBN News. Turnout means it will be an annual egg hunt.
Next year's going to be 20,000 eggs, double what we've got now. So we're just really excited about that.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.